Welcome to this webinar of i14y Lab. This webinar is regarding the certification and badging process we did in i14y Lab. So myself Ajesh, and I work as an ORAN test and verification engineer in the i14y Lab. So my job involves bringing up of test setup, monitoring, and working with the ORAN test specifications and implementing those in the lab. Pretty much execution of these Plugfest test scenarios, monitoring those, reporting those. It's like all things that has to do with the 5G radio technologies. So coming to the certification and badging, so there are more than around 20 certificates, badges are being there in the market already, mostly issued from the labs like from the Asia Pacific. So that means if you look at, there have been already multiple certificates that's been issued from Aure Lab, OTIC Lab, Asian OTIC Lab, and European Lab and Japanese Lab. So from the i14y Lab, so we issued certificate for ORAN conformance and a badge for the ORAN end-to-end testing. So if you look at the number of certificates or badges that's been issued from in the previous years, you could really see that the count is really increasing. And if you look till the half of 2024, so we have issued, there is more than 9 or 10 certificates already in the market. So yeah, there is a strong growth in this sector, and more labs are coming on this field, and they are initiating this certification because more and more vendors are coming up with their products, and they have to prove that their products are compliant with the ORAN specifications, and so they have to test this externally. So OTIC plays a major role in testing these devices and make sure these devices are compliant to the specifications. So what does it result in? So the ultimate aim is to make this ORAN devices in a way of its plug and play, where you could just take some modules out of this ORAN chain, and for example, if you want to replace a CUD RU in the whole test setup with a different vendor which is compliant with the same ORAN, then you could just do it as the plug and play. So yeah, we make sure all the protocols and performance of those modules are in par with the ORAN specification and 3GPP related test cases. So how did we start? So we started this discussions and all those preparations for the certification beginning of this year, which means more of it involves discussions with the stakeholders, so which involves the radio vendors, the CUDU vendors, the test equipment vendors. So because we need the support from the test equipment vendors to make sure we are able to execute all those mandatory and conditional mandatory test cases, so that we execute it properly and we collect the logs and results, and so that we will have a quality report for this certificate or the badge. So we had initial discussions with the different radio vendors, those who are there in the Europe and as well as the Asia Pacific, with the test equipments like vendors like VIAVI, Calnex, and Roden Schwartz, Keysight, and we started discussions with these vendors, and to create a minimal viable plan to go forward with the certification, so that we have at least a couple of certificates, I mean 1 or 2 certificates and badge by the target was the MWC mostly. So we had more than 2 months of time to execute this plan. So we started preparation of these test cases. We started collecting details of the radio vendors and the CUD vendors about their product, and we have to map those test cases according to the features present in that product, and we made a very good test plan for the test cases. That means including all those mandatory and conditional mandatory test cases. We had multiple rounds of discussions with the equipment vendors and the radio vendors. We had joint sessions where we really went through all those test cases to make sure whether it's really these test cases are really supported and as per the ORAN complaint. So because before we begin a process, we really need to know whether these products are really tested, as well as are they really compliant to the ORAN specifications. After some discussions, we took notes of what are the hardware resources, software resources, and compute resources required for making this project, and we started exchanging these test cases that we are planned to execute with the test equipment vendors and the radio or the ORAN vendors. And then we began the process, which means these test equipments that were brought to the i14y lab, was installed in the i14y lab with the support from these vendors, and as well as the device under test is brought to i14y lab, and we made the 2 test setups, one for the end-to-end and one for the conformance. Even for the conformance, we made sure that we do it very precisely. So we had multiple test setups for a single conformance. That means we had a test setup from the Keysight technologies, and we had a similar test setup for the VRV and Rohde & Schwarz, with VRV and Rohde & Schwarz equipments. And we started executing all those test cases from the mandatory to conditional mandatory. Yeah, it was not an easy job, because it was not like you would try a test case and just passes as it is. Like, we have to make sure all those configurations which we do in the test equipment is exactly the same as what is configured in the REO as per the features of the radio. So you mean all the RF related parameters, the ORAN protocol related parameters, and the M-plane related parameters. And even for the end-to-end, like, we need to align these test cases and all those configurations in the UE emulator, be on the core, and all those components involved in the end-to-end test batch. So if you look at the timelines, yeah, we started on the beginning of the this year, and we are able to complete most of the things within 3 months. So which involves testing, execution, log collection, results collection, creating of a quality test report, and submitting it to the ORAN. And then we had a ceremony as well, where we presented these certificates or badges to the corresponding vendors. So coming to those test cases or the challenges, so maybe I will talk more about the challenges. Yes, it was not an easy goal, easy to go. So which means, like, we had made multiple troubleshooting sessions to check if the test case did not go very well as per the specification. We had to debug what went wrong, and with the support of the radio vendors as well as the CU/DU vendors, we really go through each specifications and all those configurations in in the equipments. And if something is not working, we will ask the radio vendors or CU/DU vendors to fix it, and we had to repeat all the test cases again from the beginning to make sure really the fix really worked. The fixes are basically, if it could be the protocol side, or if it could be the radio, maybe the RF power is not enough, or so yeah, basically we have to make sure that all those process steps described in the TAFG specification or the ORAN conformance specification is really followed, and all those results are really as per the expected results in those specifications. So yeah, so we have make sure this is strictly followed throughout our phase of the testing. And who are these vendors? So we decided to go forward with the vendor called Vividian Technologies, based in India, and the product was an indoor 44R 5G ORU. It's a FR1 ORU, and it's of low powered indoor use. And for the Capgemini, it was the Capgemini OCU ODU bare metal configuration, and it's for the FR1 testing. And the radio used was the Foxconn radios, because here the DUT is the Capgemini, who's the vendor who has provided this ODU and OCU, and along with the Foxconn radios we executed these test cases. And coming to the whole testing phase, so we really executed all the conformance, mandatory conformance and conditional mandatory conformance test cases with the support from Keysight, VRV and Rohde & Schwarz. We made sure that all the M-plane, S-plane and CU plane applicable test cases have been executed in the radio, and all these results were compared with the specification, with the results or the expected results in the specification, when we made sure all test cases are really thus followed the test description or the test expected test results in the specifications. For the end-to-end batch, we more focused on executing the mandatory test cases, functional test cases, which involves the UE registration, deregistration, and mobility test cases, functional test cases, and also the mandatory 3GPP SCAS test cases. It's nothing but the security related test cases, and we executed all of them which are applicable for that corresponding test bed. So we got support from all those vendors, including the test equipment vendors and the DUT vendors. They were really cooperative during this phase of testing, and we made sure that we created a quality report, and we reviewed this report with corresponding engineers or who are architects in this field. And finally, once all these test reports are ready, we uploaded to the ORAN, and it's available in the ORAN forum. Next phase was we successfully announced that we have did so much for this before this MWC, and we had a program here where all these vendors, the equipment vendors, the test equipment vendors, as well as the DUT vendors were present here in the i14y lab, and there was a ceremony where we handed over the certificates to the corresponding DUT vendors. If you want to know more about this technical debuggings and all those each test case by test cases, please reach us, and we are happy to help. Thank you.